So I don't usually hear from folks before a sermon about a topic, but this week I heard from 3 people, which says to me that how we make our choices may be on your minds as well. I grew up outside of Boston, and we shopped in a local chain grocery store that was considered large for the time, but now would be small. A small produce and deli shop, a co-op out of my church basement, and then later a brick and mortar co-op that would have fit in our church kitchen. We didn't have a Walmart or Target nearby, and I had never even been inside one until college. My friends took me to the Target at the Arsenal Mall in Watertown to get some stuff for our dorm. And I walked into the toothpaste aisle and just about had a panic attack. I had never seen so many choices in one aisle. I said in my head, if not out loud, do they have a whole aisle for everything? I mean, kinda, yeah. It blew my mind that there could be so many options for toothpaste. I don't know why that was such a big moment for me. I had seen huge department stores and malls and shopping districts in cities, but there was something about that many choices for something as simple as toothpaste that helped me feel the juggernaut of big stores edging out downtown stores. And please do pardon the drama, but I was studying sociology with a bunch of socialists. The gaping maw of American consumerism. I could feel the pressure of people seeking a lot of cheap choices, wanting shiny aisles with 100 options, coming to gobble up my town. It was 27 years ago, and I have never forgotten that feeling of dread and wonder at an aisle of toothpaste. How do we make choices? What are the things that we're weighing as we make decisions? And what does that tell us about ourselves and what we value? Navigating the day-to-day can be complicated and full of compromise and negotiation with ourselves. In the case of toothpaste, do we decide based on what the product does, what's in it, where it's from, where we're buying it, what the packaging is? Each choice we make helps illustrate our values and is grounded in our experience. From little choices to big ones, like how we treat one another and what we do with our time on this earth. It can sometimes feel overwhelming, and that's why paying attention to our grounding can be so vital, so that we are not awash in choices without a compass to guide us, but rather choosing from a place of self-awareness and grounding in our values and beliefs. Every choice we make is connected to our history, our context, our experience, and limited by factors we cannot always see or know. And so we have to just do the best we can with the information we have, with the knowledge that the future us may not always love the choices that the past us made. We may grow and change and learn new things and approach problems and choices differently at different times in our lives. The ability to make choices, big and small, is, in part, a reflection of how much freedom and power a person or society has. As a nation, we are in an election year, and through our votes for president and down the ballot, we'll be determining what choices folks will have about their health, bodies, gender expression, who and how they love, and safety. We'll be voting about who should have access to firearms and how. We'll be voting about our climate, national security, global security, immigration, and on and on. We'll be voting about the foundations of democracy, the rule of law, and who can legally be held accountable for what. We'll be voting about who has the freedom to make different kinds of choices for themselves, and who can make choices for others. There's a lot on the line. In addition to voting in November, this year we'll be making choices about how we engage with news about the election, who we talk to about it, what actions we take, and much more. On a much smaller scale, in our Unitarian Universalist Association, we'll be voting in June about proposed changes to how Article 2 is written in our bylaws, that dry thing I mentioned from before that's actually pretty meaningful. At this time, that section includes our principles and sources and a years-long process to update that text with a language of shared values will culminate with a vote by representatives from all of our congregations. The language of principles and values act as a baseline for our choices as a denomination and as congregations. For many congregations, including our own, they are part of our covenants. They help guide us through the questions we ask ourselves as we make decisions together. So in this way, the language we land on is very important. It is also true that it's not dogma or a creed, and so as congregations, we may make choices about how we use the language we decide on in Article 2. I encourage you to take a look at the updated text, I'm not going to read it to you, and talk with our delegates once they're determined this spring. In June at General Assembly, everyone can attend the debate and see the vote online, and it's free, and you can just register and attend, whether you're a delegate or not. Throughout the winter and spring, we'll be bringing the text of the shared values language into worship for us to engage with like we did today and like we did last summer. This is to try and help us so we can try on this new text, and importantly, to help ground us in our shared UU values in this slog up to the November election. In the last 5 or so years, a pattern has developed in our denomination that parallels dynamics that you've probably seen in our country. As people, including ministers, who previously were not held accountable for the impact of their language and behavior, are held accountable. They see this as an affront to their free speech and ability to act as they choose. When asked to engage in processes of reconciliation and repair with those they have harmed and to remain in covenant, instead they choose to leave. There is a fundamental misunderstanding that free speech and inquiry means no consequence. But that's not the case in covenanted community or in society at large. We can speak freely in Unitarian Universalism, but we may be challenged and held accountable for what we say. In the important conversation about shared values at General Assembly, I just want to take this moment to send out into the universe. I hope that we are as impeccable with our word as we can possibly be. As we prepare for the vote, I hope that we are thoughtful and compassionate in our interactions with one another, and that we hold each other accountable in naming language and behavior that supports unconscious bias and white supremacy culture. As we have conversations about Article 2 over the next 4 months here in our congregation, we can practice and lean in to our covenant and ground ourselves for our choices out in the world. Choices are shaped by our beliefs, ethics, history, context, from toothpaste to theology and politics. The way we make choices at 5 years old will be different than 50, and no choice is made in a vacuum. There are lots of factors that limit our choices, some that are biological and more that are societal and circumstantial. Some scientists and philosophers say that free will is an illusion. However, in the practical day-to-day, our experience is that we make choices. Some have more freedom of choice than others. What are the norms in our families and communities? What do we have the right and/or ability to do or not do? What are the societal or economic constraints? As people engaged in faithful reflection, grounded in love and compassion, we can work to unpack the whys and hows of the choices we make in our community and in our personal lives. When we are overwhelmed by choices or lack of choice, we can go back to our foundations and take some deep breaths. Alex Capitan, transgender, queer, lifelong Unitarian Universalist activist and leader, wrote, "Tell them the inherent right of every person to have full authority and agency over choices they make about their lives and their bodies is a spiritual and human imperative, that there is a word for this, and it's liberation, that there's nothing more worth fighting for. Whether there is a force outside of us or not, whether we have free will or not, as Unitarian Universalists, we have said that we choose to cultivate compassion and seek justice, to work toward a world where all people have the opportunity to make more choices and have greater freedom. Through our choices, we can work to live into a more loving and compassionate world. We can grow and practice so that we make our choices from a place of self-awareness and grounding in our values and beliefs. Most importantly, when faced with hard choices or walls where we see no choice, we can know that we are not alone and we are all connected by love. So may it be, and amen.